Hi guys, welcome back to The Real Dads in New York. I'm Carlos.
I'm Richard, and today, let's get real about parenthood.
I'm tired of being the unicorn.
Meaning what?
Most people think that it's strange that two men can raise a child. The thing for me, I think one of our followers asked about how is it that two men, or how is it for us, two men raising a kid? The strangest thing is that nobody's asking a single grandmother who's raising 3-4 kids in the house. So for me, it's not a phenomenon. It is everyday life. It's not waking up thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do it today? You're in an autopilot. It is knowing your duties as a parent and living up to your potential as a parent and learning from your parents' mistakes and trying not to do the same thing. And whether it's punishment, whether it's lack of communication, whether it's lack of saying I love you, how do you learn from your parents' mistakes and try to be a better version of who you should be as a parent?
Yeah, but I think everybody has this, not everybody, I would assume that most people are trying to, as you said, do things differently than their parents did based on either the traumas they experienced with their parent. Dad or mom wasn't always there, always working. They disciplined me in a certain way. They handle me a certain way. And based on how I feel, I'm not going to parent in that direction or in the opposite direction. But to the point you made before about this idea that we're unicorns, good parents are good parents. And no matter what the construct of the family unit is, we're all trying to do the best that we can. And yes, unlike relationships where there may be no good handbook about what a healthy gay relationship looks like, there are many instances, many avenues, many perspectives on what a good parent is, but all of us are trying to find our way. And so when people ask us about whether or not it is difficult being a two-dad family, parenting on a whole is difficult.
I think the question for that, or the underlying question in that, is how two men get along.
And what do you mean get along?
Like
who does what?
Not only that, but it's where it's a symbol of two aggression, like two lion ruling in the...
Yeah, but that's my problem is, and look, we play all day on social media, but and people assign a gender role because that's what they know, right? People think the traditional family unit is a mom and a dad. There's female energy and there's male energy, and kids need, quote unquote, mom and dad to be a whole person. When let's be honest, right, there are plenty of gay people who have had two heterosexual parents in the same household who are still together, and guess what? They're still gay. There are plenty of people who were raised by a single mother who happen to be a straight male. There are people who were raised with a single dad who happen to have a girl who considers themselves to be a straight female. And all the intersections of gender fall into that category. Who your parents are doesn't determine
it doesn't define you.
Gender identity or your sexual orientation. And that is the most frustrating stereotype, I would call it, to have to battle. But ultimately, what I care about as a parent is that my child is raised to be a person of good moral character. They are a loving individual. And no matter who they choose to love, they're operating with the right set of beliefs that will express love and receive love freely. Now, will we have a perspective on who our child or children end up with? Of course, because we're parents, and
you're going to
can't choose for them.
But again, you're going to feel a way, especially when that child deters from your opinion.
Yeah,
and I want to raise a child that is going to be independent of my opinion, because at the end of the day, I can't dictate how or which path you should take. As long as you are striving to be the better version of yourself, my opinion might influence you choosing a path, or it might push you to go into a different path that is opposite of what my opinion is.
Yeah.
As parents, I think, and I was getting ready for this, I was sitting or standing next to the sink, and I'm thinking, this is not my first rodeo. And
Hold on, people are going to think you have kids out there. Can you clarify that, please?
And I would say I do in a spiritual sense, because before we met, or in the process of us meeting, I was involved in the youth community, running a dance group, doing fashion shows. Even beyond that, I started out in church to some extent. And the investment you make is your time. Investing in someone else's child who technically they call me a leader in the church or a leader in the community. So the time that I spent, and if I calculate all of that time, that's a good chunk of my years that I committed to help and encourage and motivate others. And I think looking back at some of those individuals now, some of them have died through whatever illnesses.
Some of them are parents themselves now.
And some of them now are married with kids.
We actually saw one in Miami, right? I don't remember his name, but he's now a politician in
New York.
In New York, and he's raising, a child with his wife.
Yeah.
And, it was nice about that, though, I didn't mean to cut you off, was we got a glimpse of even their parenting style, right? I think you mentioned to me that there is
every Friday
Freestyle Fridays or something.
Jermaine, what's up?
But again, even that is a tradition that they have found to work for their family. And when people ask us about
his mother was his example, and his aunts was his example.
Was his father in his life?
I think the father was there, but wasn't necessarily. And I don't want to lie on the story, but I think the father wasn't necessarily there. He was busy working.
But either way, no matter what his story is. And I think that's
the thing. Whether you are a same-sex couple or a straight couple, the time you spent raising your kids and unplugging from the world influence that child. Whether you are getting down on the floor, playing a board game, or just spending time watching TV together. Because there's a lot of gay as well as straight couple that I believe that there are two parents in the home, but one of them is not there. So you're physically there, but you're not present in that moment of raising that child.
But I think what's frustrating to me, I don't often talk about my frustrations on the camera, but one of the things that's frustrating to me is this idea that, look, clearly I am more feminine presenting than you are. And people are often like, oh, you're trying to be...
You are.
You're trying to be Tim's. Okay, here we go. You're trying to be Tim's mom, or what about his mom? What about his mom? What about his mom? Or who are the female characters in his life? Because every child needs a female energy. We all have feminine and masculine energy, and I'm actually really tired of people putting us in a box. Not just gay couples, but any couple to say,
or any parent.
Thank you. Any parent. A mom is supposed to do this. A dad is supposed to do this. We are all nurturers.
I was raised by a single mother.
Right.
You were raised by a single mother. And if I should say so myself, they did the best they did.
They did.
And we didn't turn out bad.
And they were, at least in my case, and that was the case for you too, but there were very strong straight men in my community. My grandfather, my uncles. So this is not a situation
and whether
where...
you had them in your family, or whether they were in your church, or whether they were in...
They were present.
Whatever, police, athletic league.
But it didn't influence me being gay or not, right? And I think when people look at us and they see us raising a boy, their perception is that we are somehow projecting our sexuality onto our child. Oh my gosh, they see you guys kissing. What is he going to feel and think? Oh my gosh, don't groom him, quote unquote, to be gay. When I'm like, I'm raising my child to be a good, loving person. And yes, if we were a straight family, would people have a problem with us showing affection to each other in front of our child? Now, again, there are things that may go too far.
If I'll say this because it just come to my mind. They are gay couples that presents to be gay, and they say they're gay, and that's part of the LGBTQ plus.
The umbrella.
But the thought I just had was they are transgender individuals
raising children
that are raising parents.
And doing a great job.
They biologically carried that child.
Right.
They might present as male, but they have the capability of carrying a child.
Not present, they identify.
Identify as male.
Right.
So the thing is, at the end of the day, are you a good parent and doing your duties as a parent? That's all that matters.
But who goes to say what a good parent is?
The child.
Right. And that is where...
The outcome of that child.
But that is where the challenge comes up. right? Because we are all quick, and we do it too, if we're honest, right? We see a parent out, right? Wherever the out might be.
Judgment.
And we're like, oh my gosh, why is this parent doing that? Because it differs.
But I think it's also we were raised.
But it differs from our own perception of what we would do as a parent. But so now, for example, we aren't going to have Timothy rolling around on the floor at an airport. That's just not what we're willing to do. There are parents who do that.
But sometimes he might test you and do that because he learned that from somebody else at school.
Correct.
The thing is this.
But it doesn't mean, though, that we're not good parents because he did that. And it doesn't mean that the parent who is overwhelmed at the airport with their two children, with one of them rolling down the runway, that does not mean that parent is not a good parent.
The judgment that we might have is based also on where we stand.
In that moment.
And where we're looking, how we perceive this encounter is also based on how we were raised. West Indian parents, some of us we
can unpack that.
We don't deal with tantrums.
We also don't deal with feelings, which is dangerous.
But there's a difference between the feelings of acknowledging the kid in the moment and saying, okay, we are going to grandpa or grandma's house, and the kid is just upset leaving his toys at home and trying to. There's a difference. But if the child is acting up because he or she wants a Snicker bar on the shelf that he just passed or she just passed, and parents said no because they know the consequences of sugar catching a flight, and that kid started to act out, I think we might perceive it as, oh my God, she can't or he can't control their kid. But every kid...
But there's the control. Like, we're not here to control our children.
Every kid has their uniqueness and their individuality.
The personalities.
That sometimes can trigger one parent to react a certain way, as well as he or she is a fear or afraid of another parent and know there's certain things they won't do because there's a consequence to that. So I think overall...
Which parent are we? Or who's who here?
Timothy knows not to necessarily play with me. But even though I say this, there are days when he tests you.
He will, because he's a human being. You'll call him. Child.
But even with each other, we test each other, right? There are times where you might feel for steak or salmon or whatever.
A good steak, child.
And I might feel for some curry chicken. At the end of the day, it's the individuality. Can we cook both? Sure, we are blessed enough that we can afford both. But sometimes I would then decide, okay, what I'm craving, I have to put aside my feelings and then partake in the steak with you.
But I think I never want our child or children to fear us, because I think when you go back to this West Indian, or I can't even say it's not just the West Indian, it's a cultural thing. And the cultural thing is...
It's actually stemming from slavery.
Children do as I say, not as I do. And that is such a harmful way, from my perspective, of raising a child, because you're not raising a child to be an independent thinker. Right? When we control our children to the point where they can't function... That independent
thinking too can also create a monster.
Yeah, but it's called open communication. We need to speak to our children like they are the smart, capable human beings that they are. And oftentimes, we don't do that or create the condition to do that until they're much older.
Most of us are
then we wonder why they don't talk to us.
Most of us are not savvy enough to deal with a kid
whose fault is that?
Listen, there are times kids say the darndest things was one of the things that was out.
Kids, you should tell the truth.
And training a child or teaching a child how to be that independent. Your mom oftentimes tell me stories of you and whoever influenced you, along with your character as a child. You were very mouthy.
I was.
I
still am.
You would see, she told me about the woman.
I was in church, right?
In church. And you told the woman,
well,
why don't you take a picture? It lasts longer or some shit like that. And
that's not exactly what I said. Don't let these people think I was that precocious. What happened was, the woman thought I was cute, I guess, and she was making faces and, like being nice to me. And I guess was on my mom's lap facing the pew behind her, and she was staring. I'm like, well, right? Like that was my response. And of course, that's just my personality. But rather than scold me for that, rather than, look, the last time I can remember my mom disciplining me, besides when I was 18, I'll talk to you all about that later, I was like 4. The last time she had to physically discipline me. And she made the choice in that moment to say, you know what? That's now how I'm going to choose to reason with my kid, because I can't spank them forever. You don't agree with that.
No.
Right? And so this is where we differ on parenting. I don't believe that you have to spank your child for them to listen to you, because that's a parenting tactic out of fear. And hold on. And it shows to me that I've lost control. Therefore, my way of dominating you.
You just mentioned about being in control. It's not about being in control, right? It's about when I say don't do, it's for your safety.
Well, yes.
That's the thing where most kids who are on autopilot and just enjoying being a child take it for granted of the dangers that they might face. So you as a parent has to govern their space to make sure that they're safe, even from themselves.
Now, people are going to have problems with word choices.
I don't care.
Whatever the case is. There are people who are choosing to gentle parent. That is their perspective.
And that's based on their experience.
Correct. But also, it's now a belief system that people have adopted. And by the way,
it's American
you would
system.
argue that my mom kind of gentle parented me to some extent. My mom is
we're not going to tell the whole.
Yes. But I will say, it is not.
But she raised you and your sister
very differently.
Differently, because she had to. That's the whole point of parenting.
But hold on.
You could have 15 kids.
Yes,
you have to figure out each kid's nature and adjust as an adult to that.
Right, but what you just said, we as adults have to adjust
Yeah,
for
but
our
most
children.
adults can't even govern their damn self.
Well, then...
And I think that's the thing where, if you stop to think about it, there are times when we are caught up in life doing things, making a living, or trying to strive to be better in the sense of finance. And you get caught up in work mode versus having a balance. And we talk about discipline. Even talking to Gary the other day, one of my good friends, he says, I don't discipline my kids. And I thought to myself, he has 4 kids with his wife. And they've been together for years, like 20 years or more.
Yeah.
And he has never, now, is he not the disciplinarian and his wife is? Allison, what's up, guys? Is it that both parents decided we're going to communicate verbally to our kids, and they're going to hear, even if it takes 6 times, they're going to eventually hear and conform to what I'm asking.
Look at the relationship that they both have with their children. It is not rooted in fear.
No.
It is rooted in respect.
But actually, there's some, I think no matter, the oldest daughter, I think, is now, 21 or so?
I think she's 21.
They still fear him. Because there's a sense of...
It's not physical fear.
Fear is fear. You fear your mother, even at 36.
I have a reverence to my mother that I don't think that a lot of people
whether
have.
you want to call it reverence...
But what am I saying? She's not going to discipline me.
But that's not the point.
Years old.
Is having the idea that my mom is... She disapproves in my actions or behavior and how I carry myself is hurt enough to make you want to walk right. And I think...
yes and no.
But that's the...
Yes and no.
Whether you want to deal with it on camera or not, the bottom line is...
on camera or off camera, that's what it
truth.
is. Okay.
From my perception...
You don't always agree on things.
My perception is I've seen you act a certain way because your mom is in the room.
Right, out of respect.
Again, fear, respect, whatever you want to call it.
I don't think
it
it's
is
the same things. I want you to comment below. Are respect and fear rooted from the same origin? Because I don't think that it is.
It can.
It can be, but in my case, with my mother, I'm not fearful of her.
That's your perspective.
Right, but everyone has a perspective. Please share it down below in the comments.
It's your perspective.
Okay.
And this is going back to about parenting. Sometimes we are caught up in living. And sometimes we take for granted those simple moments of spending time with your significant others as well as your kids. because the other parent has it. Now, if you were a single father,
It would be up to me
you would have to make the time to, while emailing,
doing all the things.
you're feeding or changing diapers or whatever the case is. So I think those moments when we can look back at the partnership we have and also those individuals who are single parents, how do they do it?
Yeah.
They have to be present in order for the kids to get nurtured.
And they have to be open-minded enough to allow their child to come to them and talk to them. This is the thing about judging each other that it kind of all boils down to. We are frustrated or annoyed when people think that two men can't raise a healthy child in the way that society has long presented a family unit to be. That's our frustration. People who gentle parent are equally frustrated, potentially, with the criticisms and the questions and the assertions people make about the ways in which they choose to raise their children. The idea here is that there are many different ways to raise a child, and there are healthy ways and unhealthy ways that will have both positive effects and unintended consequences, regardless. And it's not my responsibility or my right to judge another person's parent. All we can do is not judge. All we can do is parent the way that we see fit. And we are showing one aspect of a two-dad family. Another two-dad family might raise their child completely differently.
Might have a nanny.
We don't have a nanny. Should we get it? Anyone want to be our nanny?
No. Hell no.
No, we'll do it ourselves. Thank you.
I just thought about this also. For the same-sex couples that choose not to be parent, is anybody going in their DM going, why don't you want to adopt or why don't you want to have a child?
Some people do. It's none of their business.
But some people don't. And it's still fine.
Right.
At the end of the day, we all have to make choices that we're going to have to be comfortable with and live with for the rest of our life. And again, just thinking about even coworkers in my past who, one of my directors back in the days when I was 19, her career was her baby. She chased the growth of success versus choosing. Now, she had nieces and nephews that she was a part of raising.
She made a choice not to have children.
But she wasn't a bad person because she chose not to have a kid.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I would rather you choose not to than choose to and then destroy this
But I
human
think
being.
even something you said that I slightly disagree with. I don't view parenting as a job. I view parenting as an experience, right? Because yes, there's certain responsibilities that come with being a parent.
And I think a responsibility is a job for me. My responsibility, it's my duty to perform the best of my ability. If not, I will be drinking liquor all day, every day, and would not be...
All day, every day.
But that's the point. There are people who are addicted to drinks or to alcohol, and they're not functioning as parents. And they're addicted to whatever else, and they're not functioning as parents. So I know, walking in my consciousness, that my duty is to be there while you're working, and this is work for us too, but while you're doing your regular 9 to 5, somebody has to bathe Timothy, somebody has to cook dinner, somebody has to take care of the house. And that's not a woman thing to do. That's a thing that needs to be done.
It is.
And I'm available to do it.
Yeah.
My father was a person who cleaned and do all the things and probably iron better than some women and cook better than some women. But the other responsibility of being a parent, he was never there.
Yeah. We just have to get really real that parenting, no matter how your family is constructed, is going to be a unique experience for every individual family. And as annoying as it is for people to question us about, well, how does that work, raising a child? And God forbid we have another child that's not a girl. It's going to be another scenario that we're choosing to only have male children. Again, people are going to, we understand that putting a portion, and we always say this, a very small portion of our lives on social media is going to invite criticism. But we're here to say that a two-dad family, whether it's this two-dad family, another two-dad family, a single dad family, a single mom, a grandparent, an aunt, whomever is raising a child, as long as that human being possesses the capacity to raise a healthy child, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, and spiritually, if you believe in that, That is all that is required to be a parent. And that's it. And so, yeah, stop. Thanks. Cheers.
I need more drink.
Okay, I need a nanny.
No, I'm the one that need a nanny.
Okay.